Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Paul Elam with A Voice for Men, and today we're going to be talking about slut walks. I want to apologize in advance. We had intended also, this was going to be a show of two Laurens. One of them, there are apparently some difficulties technically, so Lauren Brooks will not be able to join us. I am, however, joined by Lauren Southern, who has seemed to have quickly and fiercely grasped the imagination of a lot of people, particularly in the men's movement, but even outside that. Her video where she basically waded into a slut walk and asked a lot of very inconvenient questions and took an awful lot of grief in the process, I understand, has gone viral. It's over 688,000 views in 4 days. So that says a lot all by itself, including the voting on it. But without further ado, let me introduce you to Lauren Southern, the creator of that video from Rebel Media. Lauren, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I am very pleased to do so. Listen, let's start with some basics. I mean, it's easy to rush into the video and because it's so good. And by the way, folks, there is a link in the low bar directly to the video with the write-up of this program. You can go in there at any time, but first let's get to know this lady and see what she's about. So let's start out with what any interviewer might ask you. If you can tell us just a little bit, non-really, deeply personal stuff, but just a little bit about your upbringing, your background, where you're from, and maybe that'll help us get from who you are as a person to now who you are clearly as somewhat of an activist on these issues.
Sure. There's not a whole lot of connection between my growing up and where I am now, other than the fact that growing up as a kid and through high school, I was quite the contrarian. I got kicked out of a lot of classes in high school for asking questions the teachers thought were inappropriate or unacceptable, questioning what they were saying. So I was quite the contrarian in high school. A lot of my essays, teachers would talk to me after class and say, "This isn't an idea we taught you in class. Where'd you get this from?" So,
Oh, so it must have been a real original idea.
yeah, exactly. I didn't do the whole copy and paste out of the textbook onto my paper. So,
Okay, would you consider yourself more or less a born iconoclast?
I don't know. I wouldn't consider myself that. No, not really.
Because you certainly seem to take on the status quo with quite a lot of vigor. Has there been any personal experiences in your life where you perhaps seen the effects of the problems that men and boys face in modern Western culture that prompted your feelings about this to become even more passionate?
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was in high school, I played a lot of volleyball and outside of high school as well. And a lot of the girls that I played with, I'd notice that, especially one incident where one of the girls on my team falsely accused a guy of assaulting her. And she had told us, a few of us, and was like, "Oh yeah, I just told them that he kissed me forcefully because I didn't want people to know." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so wrong." I also had an experience where I was going on TV and I was standing with another gentleman beside me, and we were both talking about politics and everything. And the TV man comes up to us and he asked me to do an interview. And when we were right about to go and do the interview, he told me, "I only picked you because you were a young woman." And I kind of look back at that incident and I think the gentleman beside me was more articulate. He was more competent to go and do this interview, but they picked me because I was a woman. So I started to notice all of these trends happening in my life where I was being preferred for things because of my gender, where guys were kind of not being believed because of their gender. And of course, these are just specific incidents in my life, but that's what kind of brought me to question the feminist narrative.
Excellent. I think that's almost like a dual-edged sword there. It's very unfortunate that the choice was not made based on expertise and the ability to articulate the issues, but on physical appearance and on sex. On the other hand, what we found in the area that I work in is that women have a much better time drawing attention to these issues, a much easier time. Not that your time was easy. I watched the video, and I know that you were treated pretty horribly there. However, a man might have been hauled away in handcuffs. So whatever you're doing, let's just be glad you're doing it. Even, and hopefully we'll get to a point at some time in the culture where choices are made based on ability and knowledge instead of sex. But in the meantime, I will be as corrupt and down low as you can possibly get with the mainstream and say, we're very happy to have your pretty face out there delivering this message. And it's a very positive thing, and it's helping. So let's talk a little bit about the video. What gave you the idea to wade into a crowd of personality disordered women in a frenzy of exhibitionism and start asking them the questions that you did?
Well, I saw the Slutwalk. It was posted on my Facebook that the event was going to be going on in a week or two, and I opened it and read what the Slutwalk was specifically about. And the first thing it said was, we are walking to fight against rape culture. And when I saw that, it just like kind of struck me for a minute. I'm like, these people genuinely believe that Canada and America are rape cultures. They genuinely believe that rape is the prevalent. They'll even admit that rape isn't the prevalent thing here, but they'll exaggerate and say we live in a rape culture and perpetuate false statistics that 1 in 5 women have been raped on campus, or is it 1 in 4? I can't remember, but they will perpetuate these statistics. And I knew that I know that people are starting to believe it, because if you make a lie big enough and you tell it enough, I think that's a Goebbels or Hitler quote.
That was Goebbels.
People will start.
Yes.
Goebbels, people will start to believe it if you keep repeating it. And if these women, including President Obama, keeps repeating that statistic, the 1 in 4, and that we live in a rape culture, if they keep repeating it, people are eventually going to believe it if no one goes and questions it. So I just really wanted to go there and finally show that there are people who don't agree that we live in a rape culture, that there are people who are tired of the fear mongering. Rape does happen, absolutely. Sure. And it's a terrible thing, but to exaggerate and fear monger, there's always consequences to exaggerating. If you tell every woman that every man's a rapist, you're going to have the consequence of these women hating men and being afraid of all men. So they're exaggerating. I see no benefit to it, and it doesn't benefit stopping rapes either.
Well, what is your take on the response from some people? And of course, it was predictable that the criticism will be levied that what you're actually doing is you're diminishing the significance of rape, that you are blaming the victims, that you are trying to silence people who are trying to raise awareness about sexual assault as a social issue. What do you say to those guys when they bring that up?
Well, it's funny because if people tell me I'm trivializing rape by going there, but I would argue that by saying someone whistling at you is a symptom of a rape culture, women being in bikinis on billboards is a symptom of a rape culture, being flirted with is a rape culture. I'd say that's really what's trivializing rape, to equate those things that, honestly, you can just ignore that. You don't have to look at the billboard of the woman in the bikini. You don't have to listen to the guy whistling at you. You can ignore that. Whereas a rape, if a woman has been brutally raped, if society doesn't support her, if society is putting her in prison or killing her for the crime of being raped, that is a rape culture. Not this. Yes. Not this. So who is really trivializing rape here? You're
just dismissing it out of hand. And I happen to agree with you. I think what you did in essence is that you tried to bring some sanity and some real rape awareness into that scenario, which was just a frenzy. I thought just a frenzy of bullshit, that there one lie after another, one poster lying after another. I especially loved you're asking the girl who was wearing the really, really horrid crime scene bikini, type bikini. Oh my God. I mean, look at me. I'm certainly no fashion king, but I think just a sense of fashion ought to be outlawed like that. But she seemed to have this utterly nonplussed and cognitively dissonant look on her face. And then her friend came in to rescue, and turned around and started demanding that you give statistics. I saw that as a really telling little psychodrama right there, that the moment you approach somebody with a real question they couldn't answer, one of the watchers jumped in, diverted the conversation, and tried to make it about you. Did you get a lot of that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, I think I'm going to release some more footage later, but if you see that last conversation where I'm talking to the girl about consent, you can't see it in the video, but there are tons of people around me. I posted a picture to Twitter. There are like 30 people surrounding me, and they all were yelling all at once. So if someone asked me a question and I tried to answer it, while I'm trying to answer, everyone else was yelling at me all at once. They didn't care to hear my questions. They didn't care to hear my answers. They wanted to demonize me. The only time I actually got to get a few good interviews was before they knew what I stood for, and during the walk where I could kind of try and go one by one when they weren't all in a crowd.
And I'm sure at that point that the word was out.
Yeah, exactly.
about who you were. Were you ever feeling imperiled or unsafe during that experience?
Well, one girl did threaten to punch me. My two cameramen were off to the side. I have no idea what they were filming. I think they were getting B-roll of the people around me, and she just comes up to me and she's like, "I'm gonna punch you out." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness." And I call over for my cameramen, and they came over, and everything was fine. But I wasn't too scared. I knew there were a decent amount of people there that would probably step up. But the hive mind of these individuals just all wanting to yell and demonize you all at once can be a very it's a strange situation that does make you nervous. I was visibly shaking in some parts of the video because it's a strange experience to have so many people yelling all at once with absolutely no logic. There was no logic going on there. It was all just hive mind yelling.
And I've got to say, for the benefit of people that might contemplate emulating what Lauren has done here, there is danger in mob mentality. It's one thing when things escalate on a group level, they can get out of hand and terrible very quickly. So if you're going to do this, please be wise enough, as Miss Southern was, to bring some sort of witnesses protection with you, a cameraman, because that "I'm going to punch you in the face" clear and cut threat of violence from. I mean, we get tagged with being a pro-violence website all the time, which is categorically untrue. We're absolutely anti-violence in any form or fashion. And usually the people accusing us are the type of people that walk up to somebody like Lauren Southern and say, "I'm going to punch you in the face." That's one thing individually, but when you do get into a crowd and you're well outnumbered, bad things can happen. So I just wanted to issue a word of caution. Don't go into this blind or without some sort of support, because you could get in trouble. Yes.
Bring a cameraman, because they will accuse you of anything after. If anyone watched my What Really Happened at the Slutwalk video, I read through some of the accusations that they made about me, and just total lies to try and demonize me, saying I was screaming over the speakers, shoving mics in their face, telling them they deserve to be raped and all this, but I have it all on film. So later I uploaded the footage proving them wrong, and that luckily blew up as well. But if you don't have that footage, they could try and ruin your life. They could try and get you fired from your job. They could try and get you kicked out of your school. They could do anything if you don't have that footage proof, because these people, they'll get all of Tumblr on their side. They'll get Twitter. They've got this whole group of radicals that will support them and dox you online and harass you. So you have to have that proof. They don't have to have proof, of course.
No, because they have the mainstream media backing anything they say without scrutiny, which most of us here are certainly familiar with. Do you have plans to do more of this? Well, no, let me back up before I ask you that and ask you something else. What do you suppose it is about things like rape culture, about treating men like they're all potential rapists, and a lot of the victim mentality we see coming out of these ideologues? What is it that drives you to action more so than something like some forms of cancer or autism or other real struggles that people face that they need awareness and help about? What is it about this subject that really gets you going?
Well, I don't see a lot of people speaking up about it. I see men being left behind. Thank God the mainstream media and people are generally helping cancer patients. People are helping people with autism. People are helping women who have been raped. Everyone focuses on that and helps those people, and thank God. But men are being left behind. They're being forgotten about. Their issues aren't being addressed. And thank God for a voice for men and other groups, but unfortunately, the mainstream media and mainstream culture does not acknowledge men as having issues. They don't see the systematic sexism. Luckily, it seems to be making a turn for the better lately, and more people are kind of tuning in and realizing that you can't just work for equality for one gender while forgetting the other. You have to have some sort of egalitarianism where you try to bring up both, otherwise one's going to be left behind. And that's what's happened for the last bit. People have been so focused on feminism and making everything good for women that they've completely forgotten about men's issues.
Well said. And that being said, do you have any plans, or was this a one-off, something serendipitous that you decided to do, or do you plan on following this path, challenging this crazy narrative that the culture supports rape?
I may do a little more in media. It was a little bit of a scary situation for me with the whole slander, and I'm genuinely afraid of doing this again and becoming a big name out there when it comes to being egalitarian and anti-feminist. It's a scary place to be just with that one video, but I certainly do intend on, when I finish my degree, I'd like to go into law or something and just help men who have been falsely accused on a smaller level, just help individual lives. That's something I would be very interested in getting into.
I would take contention with the idea that that's a smaller level. I think that is a hugely needed path for many people in life, because if you think the media's bad, folks, try being a man in the legal system with a finger pointed at you. It is not pretty, as many of our readers know. So do you have any lessons that you took, or do you feel like you learned anything out of this? And I don't mean, you're already aware that rape culture is a myth, it's a fraud. You're already aware that there is an entire industry built on a victim mentality, exclusively for women. But was there anything about the personal interactions you had going through that crowd that surprised you?
I honestly went in there thinking that these people would be more reasonable than they were, and I made a mistake. I went in there ready to debate, ready to ask some questions, and I really did make a mistake, overestimating their logical reasoning and sanity in some cases. But what I would suggest is, I don't think we can necessarily convert feminists anymore or convert people who agree with that ideology. I think it's almost too far gone. They'll just disregard everything you say. And it should be more so about trying to stop the culture from going in that direction, because there are plenty of people who don't identify as feminists who will just follow the culture. And if we can try and change the culture to be more egalitarian, to support both genders and stop following this feminist fear-mongering mentality, that is going to have the biggest difference, not changing the minds of these feminists, because I don't think I can do it, but I do think that we can have an effect on the culture and individuals who are still undecided.
I absolutely agree with that too. As a matter of fact, I mean, it goes back to the old adage, you can't argue with a sick mind. If somebody is convinced that up is down and left is right and inside is outside, and that becomes the core of their being, their way to identify how they view the whole world, trying to talk individuals out of that is, I mean, if you're really gifted, you might be able to get one point and then 3 years later find another one. But I really agree with what Lauren is saying here. Our job is not to change the minds of feminists. Our job is to present information to the society at large by which they can make decisions on their own about the feminist narrative and about a different way of looking at men's issues. And it seems to me, Lauren, that whatever track you take, it's going to be a good one.
I hope so.
You don't have to be, folks, an MRA to help these causes. You can be totally unaffiliated. AVFM works with a lot of organizations which we have no public connection to whatsoever. We simply talk quietly behind the lines, offer help when we can, because they are a part of changing this narrative. You have people out there in Canada right now, like Barbara Kay, doing a great job of challenging the narrative that's out there. She even spoke at our conference in Detroit. But is she an MRA? No, she's a journalist, and that's what we need: is more journalists, more mental health professionals, and the like, attorneys and the like, who are aware of these issues and don't go into it buying the line that whatever situation you're in, the woman's the victim. That's simply absolutely brain dead, and it is something that can be resolved on a cultural level. And I think, and maybe you might have some insights on this, Lauren, I feel like we witnessed in the past 2 to 3 years the beginning of those changes. There used to be no voices at all, really, save for 1 or 2 websites that challenge this narrative. And now we're seeing more and more of it coming out of the mainstream.
I think there have been particular incidents that have caused that to happen, and such as Gamergate, for example. I think Gamergate had a huge effect on people starting to look at the other side of the argument. The one scientist who wore the shirt and was totally shamed for objectifying women.
Yes, Shirtgate. Yes.
Yeah, Shirtgate. Those kind of incidents are making people realize, whoa, this feminist side is really, really radical, because they've been told in university classes, high school classrooms, that feminism is just for equality. And then they go into the real world, they go online and they see this isn't just equality, this is radical. This is focusing entirely on women and not on men at all. So I do think that a bunch of people are starting to realize it through these incidents. Feminists are digging their own grave in a sense.
The Rolling Stone story had a lot to do with it, and I think it even goes back to things like Duke Lacrosse and Hofstra. There are more and more of these incidents. One of the things, I read a piece the other day, and it's tragic to me for actual rape victims, is that an analysis done of all the high-profile rapes from the UVA thing all the way back to Duke is that all of them turned out to be false allegations. Mm-hmm. Every high-profile, collegiate-related or otherwise rape incident that has made national and sometimes international news headlines turns out not to be true. For me personally, I think that is the biggest disservice to rape victims you could possibly do.
Exactly.
Is to have a media that is friendly to putting out unsubstantiated stories and pointing fingers on an ideological agenda while they're supposed to be reporting facts to the public. And they're getting shut down on this time after time again. So I'm hoping there's some cumulative effect that people start noticing when they see a high-profile rape accusation, particularly coming out of a college. They really need to dig in that story and start looking for the facts behind it, because they probably won't be getting the facts from the people who are reporting on it.
Yeah, and I did another video called "The Falsely Accused Are Real Victims" as well. I'm not sure if you saw that one, but
yes, I did.
That is one thing I'm I feel very strongly about. And you're right, these false allegations, when the women at the Slutwalk all of them claimed that they had all been raped. And I have to be skeptical of that, because you look at what they believe consent is, what they believe rape is, and rape and consent can be if someone is drunk, that's not consent, even if they say yes. If you wake up the next morning and you regret it, you can take that consent. So they're making it so that you have to question women's allegations. And you're right, it's totally making it so much worse for women who are real victims of rape and real victims of assault, because of feminists changing the word rape and changing the word consent.
That is the biggie for me, is the games that have been played with the word consent, and I'm sorry, I'm an old school guy here. Oh, it looks like Lauren is joining us.
I'm finally here.
She's finally here.
Hello, Lauren.
We now have two Laurens.
Hello.
Lauren, have you been able to listen to what's been happening before you came in?
Yes, I've been listening since the beginning of the stream.
Okay, good. Well, glad to have you, and feel free to chime in at any time. We were just discussing the negative impact on actual rape victims. And folks, when I say actual rape victims, I include men. I include our prison populations, where there is, in male prisons, there is an actual rape culture there, and it's measurable and provable. But, of course, that's never talked about.
Right.
But the impact on, let's just narrow it down to female rape victims, that when a woman is raped, and if she is like physically attacked and forced into sex, it's a hugely traumatic experience for most women. It's a terrible thing that they have difficulty talking about. I can't imagine that all of these high-profile, media-generated, phony rape stories doesn't just make them look at that and say, I'm never talking to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Does it? I mean, you're both women. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Right. No, well, no, absolutely. You're not wrong at all. I think the thing is, rape is a traumatic experience regardless of what gender you are. And I think it might be even a little bit more so upsetting for men because there is no outlet. There's nowhere for these guys to go where they feel safe. Women have the cornerstone of the empathy industry. they can go anywhere and have a voice and have someone to speak to.
Yeah.
They have support. They have places to go. Whereas if you are a male victim of rape, you are given numbers to places where you can go and talk about why it's a bad thing for men to rape women. There really is not that set of resources for male victims as there are for women. But it's something that feminists just completely overlook. They don't care about that.
And the thing is, they will claim they care. They'll claim they advocate against men being raped as well, but there's no evidence of it. None.
Right. They care, and
no, I just wanted to add that when it comes to male rape, most of them do happen in our prisons, I believe. I mean, it's nobody's really willing to gather research on male victims of sexual assault obviously for political reasons, but we do know a fair amount about the numbers, estimated around 300,000 yearly, of men that are raped in prison. Mm-hmm. And the way that often goes down is that a guard will be paid or favored in some way by a rapist inmate to get access to the 17-year-old that just got thrown in on a marijuana conviction so that he can go rape him. That is a cultural artifact. When you can, when you use it to control people as a method, when you use it as a method of payment, you're actually bartering in the bodies of young men and turning them into victims. That's actual culture. I don't know of a place that happens to women anywhere in the West, yet we just don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm. This should be a story. This should be a headline story. It should be in the news everywhere, and I honestly can't fathom why it is not, other than the fact that the media has been hijacked by feminists. That's the only way that I can explain it.
Yeah.
Well, I think another good way to look at it is to start to understand that we are the media. The one blessing in all of this is the internet, and if you've got a message, if you've got something to say, look, Lauren got 688,000 people to watch her video in 4 days. That's media, folks. That's the real deal. As long as we keep accomplishing that, we don't have to sit around with our hat in hands waiting for the mainstream media to approve of something we have to say, and we don't have to care about the negatives.
Exactly. I think that what people fail to realize is that they have power. You know, mainstream media is only going to keep that moniker for so long, because if you look at you know, technology, people are turning away. They are not going to the television for their news. They're going online to get their news. And I mean, just even the music industry, a lot of the music that you find these days, you find it online, or they're purchasing or streaming or, you know, Googling or YouTubing or whatever. The same thing, I see the trend is happening with news. A lot of the news that I get is from online. It's from these media sources that are online and people that share these news stories online. I think people do themselves a disservice if they think that their voice cannot be heard, where you have this, the internet is widespread, it's so widespread. All you have to do is believe in yourself and get the news out there, get the facts out there, and people will listen. And I think that's what's happening now.
I do too. We get you know, millions of visitors a year to A Voice for Men from over 150 countries. This is why we're under attack. It's not, I mean, if I was just still writing a one-man blog and I had 100 people a day coming to, the mainstream wouldn't bother with me or with A Voice for Men. But the fact is that gifted people, talented people, and as we will see in Lauren Southern's case, courageous people, who are going to go in and stand up for the truth regardless, have the capacity to directly compete with mainstream media. And I've already seen, even though the mainstream is still, I think, infected with feminist ideologues, we've already seen them having to shift in the past few years, having to, and now that the line used to be, there are no men's issues. Now, well, yes, there are really some men's issues, but we need to take care of women first. That was a giant reversal for them that was forced by people using the internet. And we can force that even further, and we're going to. Let's see. Either one of you, I guess we're fairly close. I think we've eaten up this subject. We've run a little over 30 minutes, and we don't want to keep people too long, but I wanted to give you both a chance to comment on what you see as the importance of women like yourselves. I've got my own thoughts, which I'll add to it, but I don't think it can be denied that women's voices about these issues are super, super critical to have. Anybody else want to expand on that and why you think it's true, or maybe if you think it's not true?
Well, I certainly think that for some reason, if a guy speaks out for male issues, he'll be just shut down as a misogynist, as someone who is looking to perpetuate and expand the patriarchy. And even though I know that women, I'm sure, Lauren, you've been called this as well, we get called that we have internalized misogyny.
Yes.
That sounds ridiculous, so people don't take that seriously. It's hard to name call us. It's hard to shut us down. It's also hard to kick us out of women's events if we want to go and protest them. Because if I go to the event and they call the police and say I'm standing there with a sign and I'm a woman and it's supposed to be a safe place for women, they can't kick me out. They can't. Whereas a man could be arrested for that. And for some reason our society also has more, I don't know if it's empathy or sympathy for women, and they want to hear their opinions more in the news because they feel that women aren't heard enough and everything. And unfortunately that goes for issues of men's issues as well. My video of why I'm not a feminist got a ton of views, and if a man made the same video, it just wouldn't have gotten the same, it wouldn't have gotten the same amount of views or popularity, which is unfortunate. And it's because people have this idea that men are automatically not feminists because they're subscribed to this misogynistic ideology, which is not true. It's men aren't feminists because feminists are working against them. They're working directly against them, whereas women are more likely to be feminists because it benefits them directly.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that to piggyback on that, yeah, as far as the mainstream media goes, you know, they are more inclined to listen to women and to listen to their voices. And when anyone identifies as a men's right advocate, you are automatically shut down, shut out. Your voice is not viewed as less important or less, uh, you know, verifiable, or you're just not seen as important or as intelligent or anything. They just do everything that they can to say that, well, if you advocate for men's rights, then you must be a misogynist. And it's that fallacy, you know, if you are not this, then you must be that. You know, just because I agree that men have issues, and I speak out against that or for those issues, then, you know, then I'm somehow against women's rights and women's issues, which couldn't be further from the case. You know, I want equal rights for everyone. It does not matter what you have in between your legs or how you identify. I want to see that happen for everyone. But I see that there is, men are at a far more disadvantage than women are at an advantage right now. So I choose to lobby for the rights of the people who are at the disadvantage, which are men. And they don't care. They don't care. It's just seen as you know, I'm the biggest, I'm a heretic, I'm a blasphemer. But
You're a labia
again,
traitor.
right, you know, but I love how they say that feminism is about equality only up until you bring up the point of men's rights where they have a problem. And how is that equality if you are speaking out against something that is, you know, it's kind of like two sides of the coin. I can speak about women's issues, but the second that I speak about a man's issues, I'm persona non grata.
Well,
You know?
I could not agree with you more. I think the only caveat that I'll put on that for myself is that I think what you both said is 100% true. The plain fact, sad fact, whether it's sad or good, your own judgment call. But the fact is that in modern culture, when it comes to issues of sex, sexuality, gender, any of these buzzwords that we use, the culture pays attention to women and ignores men for the most part. They don't tend to ignore men like me because I come out swinging, and there's a price to pay for that not every man can.
Right.
But I do want to suggest to the men out there that as great as these women's voices are and as badly needed as with the two Laurens and people like Karen Strawn and a list that could go on and on and on, because there's a lot of women involved in this, is that men must continue to assert that they deserve to be heard as well. They have to challenge society. They can't just sit back and say, well, now that women are talking about it, the problems are going to be fixed. That's crazy. That's not true. It's going to take everybody. It will take men and women unified together, working together, just like we do at ABFM. We get called the biggest misogynist website in the world, and we have Erin Pitsy, Ann Cools, and women that are knowledgeable and skilled and independent and autonomous, free-thinking women that align with us simply because they know that what the media says is BS. And we're really grateful for that. But we still have to have men standing up and challenging and saying, look, I'm not Lauren Southern, I'm not Barbara Kay, I'm not Karen Strawn. I'm saying the same goddamn thing. And and this culture needs to hear it coming from the mouths of men too, until it becomes normalized. And it will be if we do.
exactly. And I think another strong point to bring up is that a lot of people don't understand that their vote has power and they don't use it. You know, women are the majority of the voters in this country, and I believe in Canada as well. Um, for whatever reason, I think part of it has to do with a lot more men being put into prison. Once you're in prison, then your voting rights are taken away, which is a whole other situation to address. But you have to use your voice, okay? We have these problems with the system, but people don't know how to go about inflicting or infecting change. And the way to do that is to go to your voting booths and know who the people are who are trying to represent you and understand the issues and vote against the people who are not going to support the issues that you feel are important. So I just cannot stress that enough. You have to use the systems that we have in place, and the strongest one is the voting system. Just go out there and make your voice heard by putting your vote into that ballot.
What do you say to, I'm not challenging that, but I have a follow-up question to it, Lauren. I'll call you Lauren B. We have so many Laurens floating around, we're going to do a distinction. Lauren, what do you say, because I understand that position and I agree with you in principle, but what do you say to people, to men in particular, activists, that look at the candidates now and they see leftism and feminism on one side of the voting spectrum, and they see forms of bigotry, white knighting, and chivalry on the other, that lead to us having something like VAWA being passed with absolute unanimity across the board between the parties? How do we overcome that at the voting booth?
Well, that one is hard, okay? It because you have to, at that point, you have to speak to a broader spectrum of people, a lot of whom they just don't care. You know, I think there needs to be a lot more knocking on doors. You have to talk to people about this. There's a lot of people who are just so blind to reality and they don't care what's happening. You know, they just live their lives and whatever happens happens, and you know, life just comes over them like a tidal wave. They don't own their decisions in life. So those are the people that we need to reach, and we need to let them know that there are ways to be the captain of your ship and not fall into these situations where you are beholden to the system, where you're not, you know, having children with women who then go and decide that they're going to use the court system or the family court system to then manipulate you into doing whatever they want, or extracting money from you. You know, there's a real traditionalist way of thinking that I don't think that we've shaken yet. You know, everybody wants to do what their parents did and do what their parents want them to do, which is get married and have children. And I'm not saying that men shouldn't do that or people shouldn't do that. What I'm saying is there's a way to do that and be smart about it.
Yeah.
People they just go and procreate, and they get into one bad situation, and then they come out of it, they're a little bit jaded, and then they go into the next situation thinking, oh, this time it's going to be better, when studies have shown that subsequent relationships are even worse than the first ones that they've gotten into. So, you know, it just the situation compounds itself and makes it worse and worse and worse. So I think the more that we let these men and women know that things can get bad and they can turn bad very fast, just make them aware of their legal rights. And I think there's a huge lack of that right now.
It's also just having a sense of what kind of person you're with. Like, there's always the idea of getting a prenuptial agreement, not getting married at all, and just living together, because marriage is obviously a religious ceremony, being united under God, so it's just kind of a cultural thing. But also just being aware of who you're with. I always tell my male friends, don't date feminists. Just don't do it. Like, sure, there are nice ones.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I'm friends with people who identify as feminists, but if they're a radical feminist that genuinely believes in a lot of these ideas, you could be seriously facing a false allegation of rape or assault if you guys break up. You could be seriously facing your life being destroyed. You could also have that happen where your children are taken from you, where your money is taken from you, because men are evil and women are always the victim. If that's the idea that the person you're with has, that's not going to end up well. So, and there are women who are strong women and do believe they should work hard, and both the man and the woman should split the work effort and should be treated equally even after breaking up, and find those women and be with them.
Right.
Right. Both of you have tapped onto something I think is extremely important. You know, in the work I've done over the years with men, what I have found over and over again, going back to what Lauren B. was saying, is that even after they get out of a traumatic, abusive relationship, say they married somebody who was either a feminist ideologue or a bona fide cluster B personality disorder, they ended up in marriage and divorce hell. Then they go back, and what I have found almost without exception, these same men pick the next woman with the same exact tools, same exact criteria as they picked the first one. And we have to put the onus on men for some of that. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and shamelessly plug it now. I just wrote an article yesterday. It's on the front page of A Voice for Men. It's also at anearformen.com, talking about how to stay off that victim train. And it requires men to actually practice some discrimination. She has a nice body is not a qualification to be a good wife. And is almost as misandric as that sounds, there is a lot of that in men, of picking based on attractiveness or shallowly understood characteristics, not knowing the character of the person or even their political ideals, anything that they're marrying, and then they wait until after the marriage to find out, and sometimes they find out in some really horrific ways. So I agree with everything you both said. I just happen to think part of the solution here is in educating men that if you're fishing with your little head for women, it was one thing to do it on the African savannah where we all came from. That was fine then. It ain't so great now. And there's got to be alternatives for men to think about who they're going to choose to be with, because it makes all the difference in the world in the end. And we're running close to out of time. Let me give you both a chance for any final thoughts that you might want to express. Lauren B., why don't we start with you? Is there anything you want to add before we close out and say goodnight to everybody?
Lauren, want to go first?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I would just like to specify that men need to be really careful with their DNA. You can have a relationship with a person, you can marry them, whatever, but once you release your DNA and give that to a woman, she has, sorry. She has a blank check to take you for whatever you have for the rest of your life. And the only way to break yourself from that cycle is to not give them your DNA. I swear by men getting vasectomies, and keep it to yourself, and, you know, move forward with caution, because women these days are out to get whatever they can get from you, and the legal system is behind women 100%. So just be careful, guys. Again, move forward with caution. You're not going to stop every single person from having children. That's what a lot of people want to do. They feel they want to pass on a legacy. Okay, that's fine, but be extra cautious of who you are doing that with, because this is not just 18 years. This is the rest of your life, or the rest of that child's life. So, you know, just be careful.
For sure. And there are still definitely women out there. I think they're unfortunately a vast minority that will absolutely respect men, will absolutely advocate for men's rights. And I think for the women that are these women you're talking about, Lauren, that do want to take advantage of men, I think men need to also tell them exactly why they don't want to get in a relationship with them, their fears, so that these women reconsider what they've been doing, reconsider the fact that they've been taking advantage of men and are looking to continue to take advantage of them. If these women suddenly have all these guys that are like, I see through you, I know what you're going to do to me, I know what's going to happen in the future if I stay on in this relationship, maybe, just maybe, they will reconsider what they are doing and what they have bought into, and this feminist narrative they have bought into. But yeah, I agree with you, Lauren. Be careful. There are still good women out there, and just look out for the ones that are looking to take advantage of you.
Yeah, exactly.
The legal system won't back you up.
They won't. Protect yourself at all costs, you know. Men and women. It's not just men and women. Yeah, the legal system will protect women, luckily, but there are still bad men out there too, of course.
Yes, there are. And women are urged to apply the same caution in how they select men. It is, if you're going to spend your life with somebody and share finances, you might want to know who it is you're getting involved with. I'm one of those, I'm a really lucky guy. I've been in a relationship, same relationship, cohabitation for nearly 14 years. We get along just fine, but I do attribute part of that to all the no's that I gave women before I met the woman that I'm with. When I saw the entitlement come out, when I saw the bitterness about men, when I saw the feminist ideology, any of that stuff, for me it became an immediate bye-bye, we're done now. And I made a point to be very clear about who I was and what I believed in going into every meeting with a woman. And that ruled out a bunch of them. And guess what, folks? It was worth it. I will never regret having done that. Both of you, by the way, have done a great job here today. I want to thank you. You sound, both of you, like you have advanced degrees from Tom Likas University.
Yes.
That is a good thing, folks. If you don't know who Tom Likas is, get out your little Google fingers and go find him, because you're going to hear some good stuff. I was on his show once, had a blast there, on the same page about so many things. Let me just close again with thanking you both of you, Laurens, for what you do. Lauren Brooks does a ton of stuff at ABFM behind the scenes. Nobody gets to see. I wish they did, because she is a great supporter of men's issues and in making advances toward that. Whether you know it or not, she's there. She's working on behalf of men and boys regularly, and big kudos to you for that, Lauren. And Lauren Southern, congratulations on making a huge splash in the right swimming pool.
Yes.
You did an amazing job of that. That took a lot of guts, and I really hope that you're an inspiration to other women and other men to do the same thing. And guys, if it's you going in and asking the question, take female backup with you, a couple of them, and camera people. But you know, nothing makes cockroaches scatter like turning on a light.
That's right.
And that's exactly what we see these women doing. They are important to this movement. I'm very grateful for both of you. And with that, I will wish everybody a good day and say that we will see you next time here for the next interview. So everybody take care. Bye-bye now.
Yes. Bye-bye.